So the the only difference will be yes. Thank you. The only difference between what we're doing today, once I set it up, and the band is the Eagles. Okay. Exactly. Is that on? Okay. Um, Believe it or not, you have not in a bad way, but sometimes in a bad way, or uh, you have to deal with people's feelings, and that's what it is. And egos, yeah, egos. No, not egos. I say egos. Maybe I threw in L there. Um, that's the hardest part. That is indeed the hardest part because um, that's why your relationship with the band is key to doing your job better with less headaches. Our job is to make sure they're comfortable and that they trust us. Because if they don't, it's a little bit of it's a little hard. I'll be honest with you. It's not. That's why I really recommend all the. I don't know what the heck am I going to do with this. Okay. Um, the musicians. I mean the um, tech people to walk to stage. You'll see me next week. My interaction with the musicians, giving them feedback. Hey, that sounds good, man. Or hey, you sang that really well. Like, oh, so pay attention to detail. You would not believe that that has anything to do with doing sound, but it has a lot to do with what we do in particular. Because pay attention to how they're singing, how they're playing, and compliment them. Not don't give generic. Oh, that sounded good, right? Why? Because when you have to tell them, hey, your the instrument's a little too loud. Can you bring it down? They'll immediately will perceive you as being on their side as opposed to what like taking a defensive posture. It's like, why are you telling me am I too loud? And believe me, it happens, right? So you want to make sure that you build rapport with them. Um, yes, and pay attention. I listen to the vocalist, right? And there you can tell like when the vocalist, like for example, I pay attention a lot to the vocalists because they're up front and they're the loudest, right? And even the worship leader. And if they some keys are a lot better for them than others, and you can tell like when everything just like clicks together, they're not you know forcing their voices, and so I compliment specific parts. Hey, that bridge right there, that's amazing. That was good on your voice, on your range, and some singers. I don't know. I think for you, I've heard you, and I think once or twice. I can't remember, and correct me if I'm wrong. But your voice, there was that song when I was here, and the times that I was here, that it was very very good for your range. I feel like almost like a country. I don't know if it is true or not. I have to listen to you again. But I don't know if if your tone is in the country, the countryside, right? So when you hear vocalists here and there, and there's a song that like fits, like really, make sure you say something, or a musician, oh that sound fine, whatever. So you get my point. That you gotta be specific. Don't be generic, because we also, when they hear something, it sounds really good, they will tell you as well. But mostly it's so that you can have a relationship with them, and when you have to tell them, hey, can you maybe get a little closer to the mic, or get a little farther away from it, or can you bring up your instrument higher or lower? There is that there is that relationship, and they're not gonna see you as a threat, or um, somebody who's like just trying to be negative or whatever. So it's really important. Let's see. Maybe you're a little taller. Let's see if I can get you right up in here. you see the. Okay, this is what I'm doing right now. Um, it's basically, hopefully, I am able to connect to this. Can you push it a little bit more? Sorry. Via USB, and I'm gonna try and send tracks from here into the board. Right here, no, it's this one right here. Yeah, so we have a car here. We can record. This is if I want to control this like it's called a DAW, digital audio workstation. Yeah, exactly, which is this button right here. If you want to set it up that way, and you can mix and record to and from the mixer. Right, what I'm doing right now is basically, hey, I want to record the worship on Sunday, right? And I want to record it on tracks. What is that? Tracks is like individual channels. You have 16 channels. I want to record all 16 channels into that, and then practice my mixing skills. That would be a good thing for you to do. Um, because because okay, so let me see if I can explain it in a way that makes sense. How do you get better at something?
Practice.
No.
Been lied to all my life.
That's always his piano teaches that way. It's not practicing the right.
Okay. Bingo. Practice makes what? Ah, not perfect. Because you can be practicing the wrong thing all your life. You still be practicing, but it's not a good thing. So it's practice makes permanent, right? So the other part of this is here. You get better by repeating, right? But also by being judged. Because I can be practicing the right thing for myself, and there's no challenge in that. There's no, you know, reward, but there isn't. I don't know if I'm good or bad because it's my own opinion. In what we do, we get judged instantly because people know they don't know that what EQ is, what faders are, but they know what more or less what sounds good for them, and it's like or wow, right? Okay, so if you want to get better, and I don't mean like professional, but you're here, you want to get it to the next step. Okay, so then you have to present that somewhere, right? So for you, for example, right, you're here more than most, right? So I'm gonna be here on Easter, right? Okay, so I'll be listening and I'll be judging, right? Okay. So because why is that important? Not but I want you to feel a little pressure. Why is that important? Because then you have to bring your A game, for example, right? Okay, so everything you may do great and you may do good, and there with a little bit of adjustments you can get there. But you're not gonna know unless you have people telling you, "Hey, that's really good. That sounded really." And so your job as well too, even if you're not mixing, and if you are hearing his work, or if vice versa, if you hear their work, hey, that was a good kick, or that was a good, mix, or that was, you know. Um, Now the other part of that, and I'll move on. Uh, Open yourselves, and between you five or whoever, open yourself up to receive um, feedback. Okay, how do you do that? You say, hey, if you hear something that is questionable, just let me know, right, or something, and be open to that. Because if you don't open yourself to that, you will be a very sensitive tech person that nobody can tell anything to. Okay, and that does not build your character in the right way. Because the moment you get told, hey, or for example, for me, when I go to churches, I always tell the worship leader, okay, tell me who can tell me they like it, they don't like it, up and down. I don't listen to everybody. I am very specific. I say, okay, so he can tell me something like in this case, for example, if I was mixing here, I would say, okay, guys, you're out there. You tell me how do you want it? Do you like it? You don't like it? And then I'm opening myself to it. So there's no surprise if she comes up and they say, hey, Byron, I think this is a little too loud. No big deal. Then I invited that exactly. So invite the feedback from people that you trust. You know, Nate, maybe somebody assigns somebody, right? So that way, they have a guide because sometimes it is hard for the worship leader or the worship pastor to tell us from up there, hey, it sounds good or bad, right? Exactly. I'll tell you, I was at a church this Sunday and yesterday, right? And all of a sudden, I got a text. Oh, I was doing the main mix, and then I was kind of listening to the stream. But it's hard because being here, I had to like try to get it. Okay, anyway, I get a text that says, "Oh, somebody online says that this is too loud. This is too from the person that they had told me." So immediately, instead of getting like, "Oh, so whatever, I'm taking care of the house," right? I had already invited that feedback. Hey, tell me, because I'm not listening to the on a phone or in my house. So they told me within 5 seconds. Okay, got it. Not a big deal, but done. Moved on. No hard feelings. No, because believe it or not, what we do is tied to how we feel. And if somebody criticizes, hey, that mix was horrible, it almost feels like they're criticizing you as a person. And I've gone through that when I started, and I've seen it. So that's why I'm saying it to you. Do not get um, invite the feedback. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Okay. All right. So compressors. While I'm setting up, so we don't waste more time. Um, a compressor. What does the word compression mean to you? Huh? Squeeze. Okay. What else? Reduce. Okay. Compression or compress. Compression. Okay. So do you guys agree? Compression, make something bigger, condenser or condense it or make it smaller, right? Okay. In audio, a compressor is that, but it only deals with volume. That's why it's called it's a dynamic dynamics here. Okay, that's compression right here because it deals with the dynamics, or dynamics in audio is loudest parts, softest parts, anything in between, right? The loudest and that fluctuation between up and down in volume, that's dynamics, right? So in this particular board, dynamics are the compressor.
So instead of dynamics, why didn't you just say volume? Isn't that the same thing up and down?
No, because then that would be just gain.
Okay.
The definition that I'm trying to there's a lot more controls to controlling the volume of something when it comes to using a compressor or the signal, not just bring it up and down, but there are ratios to it. How much, how fast you can bring the volume up and down, right? And not every signal is the same, meaning, for example, if you could see how sound is represented in a graphic, you would notice that sound any particular signal will have different parts to it. For example, the most clear one is the kick. When the beater hits the head, that there's an initial contact, right, which will always be the loudest. And then it decays. It means it dies out. That rate of decay, right, has a time on it. And the signal becomes less stronger as it dies out, right? A compressor will be able to react so fast, faster than you and I, that when he or the person hits the kick, I can't go down, I can't go up every time they do that, right? A compressor can see and react in milliseconds to that signal. Why is that important? Because imagine a bucket of water, right? Or I don't know, a container of water this tall, right? If you fill it up, right, and then you add, it's all the way to the top, right, before overflowing, and you put a rock, a very small rock, or something that just, it will take a space inside the water, and so what happens to the water? Overflows, right? Okay. That is our audio. We have just a limited amount of space in the audio that we can use, right? Meaning the tolerances of our meter and our speakers. And so if a signal is too strong to fill that space, I'm trying to remember the word for that space. I'll tell you in a second, but I'll give you the picture of it. If the signal comes into there, it will eat up the space that we have. And so what happens is that even at low volumes, that signal will spike and will fill up the entire container of water. That what we get is not a spill, we get distortion, because there's no more space for the signal to actually exist, right? Okay. I'm trying to remember, the word is right here, but I can't think of it. I'll remember again. But so why is that important? So we use tools like the compressor to help me tame those signals, so that I can so remember what I told you, that when the signal comes in here, the loudest part is the beginning of the sound, right? That's Mac, right? You can hear that. It's like there's like that sound. That will be the loudest part, and then after that, the signal will die out, right? It's like this. Imagine that's a door in myself, right? And I have my arms, and I'm gonna extend my arms, right? And I come in through the door. I open the door, and I only show up this part of my arm, my entire arm, right? But then my body and my other arm have not gone through the door, right? If you're standing there, you don't see this part. You only see part of my body, right? That's still me, but I'm not fully there yet, right? Okay. I'll tell you why I give this example. The best way I can explain it. In order for you to see me, two things can happen. Either I walk through the whole thing myself, right? Or if I don't want the door to actually open until my body goes through, instead of just my hand, like if I extend my hands here like this, right? I push the door and I'm only halfway through, but the door is fully open. You can only see my arm. You can't see my body or anything like that. In order to avoid that, instead of going this way with my arms extended, I'm going to rotate and I'm going to go in front. So now when I open the door and I walk at the same distance as if my arm was extended, you can see my whole body. Okay. Keep up with me. This arm is right here. It's the loudest part of the kick. Bingo. There you go. That's it. Because if I don't do that, all you're going to hear is the loudest part, which eats up my entire space. There's a word for it. I'll get it. My whole container, that by the time my whole body goes through, the whole bucket will be spilling, which means distortion, because I cannot, it's too much, too loud. So if I compress the signal, I'm able to rotate. For example, in my example, I'm rotating. That means I'm going to add compression, and then I walk through the door with enough space, but you can see my whole body, okay? How does that translate into the kick? The body means the part that decays after the initial impact. that's the part you're going to be able to hear. Okay? That's why we have cuts like this on the EQ. Where's the kick? Kick like this. You see those cuts? That helps my compressor because I am tailoring or I am cutting off the parts that I don't need from the kick. Just like in sculpture, right? Like you know how they do sculptures out of ice or wood. They start with the cylinder or with the square, and they cut off all until they're left with what they want. That's exactly what the EQ does. Okay. Now, only based on frequency and volume, right? We selected a frequency, a band of. You want to come over here? I feel like I'm only based on frequency and volume, because we selected what frequency we don't want, chipping off away all the things that we don't want, and then what do? We, in this case, we brought it down or we brought it up. So we shape the sound and then we bring it up and down. That's only volume and frequency, right? Now I want to take this whole thing as a unit, and I want to either bring it up or bring it down, controlled. This part would be the loudest part in this signal. Why? Because of volume. You see this yellow part right here? This line right here in the middle, it's 0. It means I have my fader there at 0. Now we're gonna get this. This is only dealing with the entire signal. This EQ is dealing with parts of the signal. The lows are being cut off. The mids are being brought down. But the highs above 2,000 and up are, what am I doing? I'm pushing them up. So when I bring this now, this is parts of the signal. This is the entire signal. I am working on little parts here, chopping it up, right? But now this deals with the entire thing. Now when I do this, what happens? I'm bringing the entire signal down in volume, okay? When I bring it up, which part is going to be loudest within the signal? Right? So that right here, because it's loudest than the other parts, the lows and the mids, this part is going to be automatically higher in volume. So if I bring it higher, that's as if I was walking through the door with my hands extended, because a part of me, the highs in that are higher in volume. By how much? So let's look at these lines. Okay, this is very important. You have minus 15s, minus 10, minus 5, 0. And then you have the same table on reverse. Plus 5, plus 10, plus 15. If we look at the 1, 2, at the second line is how many dBs? 10 dBs. So from about 6,000 or 5,000 and above, my signal is being raised by 10 dBs in volume. And from 2,000 to 5,000, it starts going up from 0 all the way to 10. So that's how much volume I'm increasing my signal by. So by the time this signal comes through, and now notice here, not only we are accentuating part of it, but the middle part and the lower part, I'm bringing them down.
So is this, you're accentuating the high?
Uh-huh.
So why do we want to do that? Because isn't that harder on our ears?
Okay. I'll tell you in a second. It depends on the source.
Okay.
Right? So on the EQ part, let me give you an example here. Steven. Okay. Right here, Steven, I don't want to hear his lows, because his lows, they accumulate along with everybody else's lows and make things difficult to hear. So I reduce them a little bit, right? But imagine I was having a hard time differentiating or understanding his voice, right? then I would add a little bit of highs, because in the highs, do you guys have the sheet from last week? Okay, right here, bingo. So notice here the highs, what do they add? They add presence. And so this is where the S's, like that sound, that makes it a lot easier to understand. It clarifies the signal. In this particular, we're talking about the voice. So the same thing with, in the case that we were getting on the kick, just because it's low, it's an instrument that has a lot of lows on it, does not mean that that's only the frequencies that it needs. Every frequency has lows, mids, and highs. Everything, bass, every instrument, every vocal, it's comprised of many different parts of the sound spectrum, highs, mids, and lows. Now, some of them, like the kick, have more low content than they have high.
But that takes up more space, right? The loads
In volume.
in volume.
In volume.
So that's why you have to block them out a little bit.
No. So when it comes to the headroom, okay, there's headroom. Okay, I got another word here.
My headroom needs to be bigger.
How much headroom is? There you go. Okay, so headroom.
That's the space you were looking for?
This headroom.
More headroom.
Headroom is like the doorway. That's about, I don't know, 7 feet, right? Or I think around 70 or 80 plus. 7 feet. Imagine, right? That's how much headroom you have. 7 feet, right? But if you have somebody who's 7'5", he's gonna be hitting his head unless he goes down, right? Okay. Every sound system has headroom. It has a determined headroom. And headroom is based on the tolerances of the lowest signal and the highest signal that it can pass through. This one has one, so there you only have a certain amount of headroom for this board. The speakers have a headroom too. So my job as a designer is to match all the headrooms and make sure that when the signal goes, I can't control how much headroom this one has, or the speakers. My job is to look at the specs and say, okay, this one has 20 plus 1 dBu or whatever headroom, right? Oh, that one has 20. Oh, that one. So you use certain tools to make sure that they're all more or less are within the range of an acceptable headroom. So that way, when you guys have music, everything goes through without one clipping before the other. It's better for me to have, not better, but it's an acceptable outcome to have the last piece on the system be the one who determines the range of the headroom, as opposed to the earlier ones. Like if this one's, imagine, a 10 and that one's a 20, by the time this is clipping, that one is like in the middle. It's no problem. But what the speakers are getting is a clip signal. So that's what the headroom is for. So a signal can eat up a headroom really fast because it's loud. Headroom only relates to volume.
So it doesn't matter whether it's lows or highs.
It depends on the volume, and it doesn't have to be the kick, but the kick is one of the loudest ones, along with the snare. You have a drummer hit. One hit is like bam, right, really fast, and so that you have to allow the system to have that enough space or headroom to allow that signal to be heard without clipping.
What's clipping?
Distortion.
Oh, distortion.
When we get to so clipping / distortion would be a 7'5" person hitting his head against the top,
I see. Okay.
because you already got to the top, to the highest part of it, and you went above it.
The water's overflowing. They're hitting their heads. Okay.
That's all clipping or distortion. In our case, distortion would be like that's it. That's distortion right there. It's and on these ones you only hear like
Now, distortion is different than feedback.
yes.
Those are two
Distortion, you're getting to the limits of your system. Feedback is the signal going through your microphone, recycling out of the speakers, going back into your microphone. That's called a feedback loop. Same signal feeding itself. And that when that happens, that's where the feedback occurs. If the feedback starts slow, like that, that means it's something on the wedges. My apologies. It's something on the mains. It's slower because you're farther away from the speakers. That's why it takes a little bit longer for the feedback to pick up. And you can have feedback on the high end, on the higher frequencies when you go like really tiny sound, or you can have low frequency feedback when it goes like that, right? Or you leave a bass string, and you don't mute the channel, and it starts rumbling like this, right? Or the kick, too loud. The kick drum mic is too loud, and it's feeding back the signal from the mains, or the subs in this case, because the subs are on the underneath the stage. So, okay, any questions on that? Okay, all right. So we determined that this signal right here, it's louder. We determined that this one is even lower, right? So notice this one is to 15 and this one is plus 10, right? So 15 and 10 is 25. The separation is exactly, right? So 25 dBs of difference, right? So how am I going to be able to hear these if all I'm hearing it's that? We compress it. But notice that compression, there are some very sophisticated compression tools which could do what the EQ does. I can only go and, hey, let me compress the highs a little bit without losing the effect of it. Okay? This is key.
Say that again.
Okay. A compressor, it's a tool that helps us tame parts of this. Well, there are two different kinds. There are many different kinds of compressors, but there's the one we have here only deals with the entire signal as one. Okay. There are some that I can say, you know what? I'm just gonna compress the high part of it. No, this one you can just get the whole signal. This right here. Yes.
You gotta ask for the money. I've capped out.
So this one will deal with the entire. You have some flexibility, I'll show you, to deal with the parts of it, but it's a little limited on that. And again, it's based on your ears, right? The differences will be more or less minor. So and again, it'll do whatever you wanted it to do and whatever you're after it, right? You'll notice it. But if you tell somebody, oh, did you like how I compressed the high part of the whatever, right? So anyway, in this case, we're gonna go here, dynamics. Let me bring up the iPad here, so you can tell this. I like the graphics on this one better because they're easier to read. Where is it? X32. Oh, do I have the oh, my connect did I? Which one is this? Is this the? Thank you. Okay, so
Ministry, Crossroads Ministry.
okay, I may need your password. I know, right?
Maybe know the what? Oh, terrible. I don't know Wi-Fi password. That one is it? No, that's Dawn before. I thought it was gonna make me. Usually it lasts.
Huh? Uh-huh. Okay, well, you find out. Okay, so now,
What'd you say? Sounded amazing.
okay, so while he's doing that, I'm gonna just open up the app right here, and we're gonna go into demo mode because we don't care about that. Okay, here we go. So you guys can see the. You guys want to get closer so I can show you here real quick? I'm gonna get a microphone and we're gonna test this thing here. So excuse me, I'm gonna get grab here.
Is he looking at access the internet or Wi-Fi?
Hey.
He's at, yeah, to access the. Try scanning that.
Oh,
Or whatever it is you want to scan. Try that. See if that works. I've not done that before. Where'd you get that from? I'm not gonna tell you. Tucker.
says Sam Cloud, like link sharing Samsung Cloud. No. No. Crossroads Ministry. No. Didn't do anything.
All right, let me try that.
Okay.
I think it's Empower.
Empower?
I was looking over there. I was going, which one?
capital E?
Engage, Empower.
I think I remember something like that.
Point, isn't it? Empower, capital E with an exclamation point? I think that sounds right. I'm guessing. Try Empower with, is it all caps though? No, just the first letter. I think it's capital.
And what was the last one? The last character?
Exclamation point, I believe.
Okay.
I was told whenever you don't know what the
No.
answer is, it's usually Jesus.
It's not. It's just silly Jesus. Okay. All right. So let's continue. Okay. So I'm gonna grab here this mic. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, ha. Hey. Hey, hey. There you go. Okay. Let's check this out. Stacy here. We're not gonna do that. We're gonna do.
Ninth, I think. That's Easter?
Okay, there you go. Ooh. I think it's because we did something to it, or I can't. Hey, hey, where's my lab? This is my lab? It's this one, right? Okay. Can you still hear me, right? Stream? Stream? Yes, you still hear me. You should be able to hear me. I just changed because I'm going to making some changes. I want to get up. Okay. So, hey, 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 hey. Okay. Woo. Effects. Okay. So, I am trying this microphone right here, wireless. This one I selected my lab and I took it off the mains. Remember last time I showed you guys? I took it off my mains. It's still going through my stream, so that will be recorded. But it is not going through the mains. So all we're hearing through the mains is this right here. Okay, so we're gonna go here. I'm selecting this, and I am going to go here. I'm gonna take away. This is our test. I'm going to go here, and there you go. I'm gonna reset all so we can hear that. And now, this is you had a question?
What is that you just touched? The frequency?
This is a low-cut filter. It allows me to take off low frequencies depending on what frequency I choose
You're in.
and below. Thank you, sir.
Do you need to be on here?
Huh? No, it's fine. So let's see here.
Is that what it was? Empower exclamation? Yeah.
Thank you. Hopefully I will be able to check out. Now let's see what the network is. 84. Connect. There you go. Okay, great. So now we go to 1 here so you guys can see what I'm about to do. Okay? It's a lot easier to see it that way. Okay, so I'm looking at the frequency. I'm gonna just, you notice I don't have a lot of lows, right, when I'm talking, but there is a perceive that my sound is composed of that because you can tell RTA, there you go, see the low frequency, and we're gonna do the, where is the other one? Oh, this one doesn't have it.
Interesting. Okay. So the spectrogram, it doesn't have, it only has bars, right? Okay. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so you see there's a little bit content at the bottom. You notice, you hear that, right? Now listen, I'm going to start taking that off. It starts cleaning up right away. So I always start at about 100, 128 right off the bat. And then I am going to take away a little bit of the mid section here. Not too drastic, right? Because I don't want to sound like this. I don't sound like that, right? You want to make it as natural as possible, right? Okay. Now, I am going to apply compression, and then each of you is going to do that. And while you guys are doing that, I'm listening to it, I will set it up so we can practice here. Compression, I selected here. The first thing I gotta do, this always starts at 0. Can you put it at 0? Go ahead, compression dynamics. And can you make sure to put this gain, let's do the threshold here at 0, all the way to 0. All the way. There you go. Okay. 0 means what? It means, well, it means something, but it means that my signal would have to hit 0 in order for the compression to start working. Okay. I'm going to explain compression based on you don't have to look at your papers, but you'll reference them later. There are several controls in a threshold. First, simple. Everything you in order for the compressor to, okay, let's put it this way. Everything in audio has an in and an out. I don't care what it does. If it's in the audio chain, right? If it's in all the systems, so if it's plugged into the system, it's got to have an in and an out. Very simple. Okay, everything. Doesn't matter what it is. Everything, every piece of electronics that we use here has an in and an out, right? Everything. Okay? So that's very important. Doesn't matter what it is, even here. Right now, because we're dealing with a digital board, we don't see the ins and outs. But it is there. Because all of this, it's a mirror or what used to be racks and racks of equipment to do exactly the same thing. Except that in order for me to have compressor for every channel, I would have to have how many in a 32 board? 32 compressors and gates, 32 gates, right? Excuse me. So now we don't. But all that to say it is that if I had a board here and I had 32 compressors, a signal would have had to go from here to there and from there back to here. That's why I say everything in audio has an in and an out. Okay, got that out of the way, right? The in for a compressor is called threshold. That's how the compressor knows, hey, I got a signal coming in. That's how it will monitor the signal. It doesn't know what to do with it. It just knows, hey, I got a signal. So how do we monitor it? It's called threshold. Why threshold? Think of a doorway, right? The threshold is the top part of it. Okay? So that's my limit. It knows, like, okay, so this is how much headroom I have.
What's the difference between a threshold and a shelf?
Okay.
No, if you don't want to answer that right now, that's
I don't want, I played the fifth. No, so threshold, it's a limit, right? It's a way to no, shelf, it comes to a filter, and it applies to an EQ. It's the way, real quick here on the EQ, notice here, it's a shape of that's a shelf because it starts from the bottom, but when it gets to a certain portion of it, everything after that is straight. There is no more up, 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 up. It's straight volume, the same volume from here all the way to infinity or to 20 plus. That's a shelf. You see, notice here? After this, everything is the same level. It's just a type of
Isn't that limiting it?
no, this is just dealing with volume. No, there's no limiting there.
Okay.
Limiting only applies to volume, but within the context of dynamics, compression, and a limiter. Only when it comes to dealing with the signal in itself and the volume of it. This right here is dealing with the shape of the signal, the EQ, the high part, for example, or the low, the mids. You select the signal that you want to affect, and what do you do with it? All you can do is bring it up or bring it down.
I wasn't here for this part, so I was just listening.
Yeah, I know. You're going to get an F on that. I just kidding. Okay, so where was I with the compression?
There's only one of those.
You were talking about the threshold.
I know, right? Where was
The threshold.
Okay, threshold. Threshold, it's this part of the doorway, for example, right? Okay, that's my limit. That's my headroom. That's all I have from the floor all the way here. Anything above that, something will happen with it. That's the equivalent of 0. Okay? 0 is here. So at some point, I have to tell the compressor, hey, so what do you want me to do when the signal hits whatever point I want? So I'm able to move the threshold up and down, but all the way up to 0. There's nothing above that. So I can move it. I want it to be more fast. I wanted it to start acting up faster, then I bring it down, right? Negative numbers, right? Okay, that's the threshold. And then you have the out, which is called makeup gain. Okay, I'll tell you what that is, but it's the out. So the in says, hey, threshold, I got a signal. What do you want me to do? Okay. Then the next one over is called ratio. Do you know what a ratio is? What is a ratio? A portion, right?
Like gear ratios.
Huh?
Gear ratios?
Yeah.
Or is that different?
Okay, so I like to put it this way, just to make sure that we all are on the same page. If I tell you, hey, for every one that you give me of this, I will give you 2. That's a ratio of what? 2 to 1, right? So I get 2 for every one that I submit, right? Okay, that's exactly the same thing. Now I'm going to apply it to the sound. For every 2 dBs that my signal crosses my threshold, 1 is going to go down. That's a 2 to 1, right? Because for every 2, if I put my threshold not at 0, because 0 would be nothing because there's nothing after that. Minus 20, for example, right? Because I'm lowering the standard, right? It's as if putting a 7-foot clearance to 5 feet, right? If somebody is 5'1", they went above by 1, right? So if I say, hey, if I 2 to 1, I say for every 2 dBs that the signal crosses my threshold, it'll go 1, right? Okay, that's the 2 to 1 ratio, right? But in reality, in sound is the reverse, because that then I can only do for every 10, if I bring it down, then it will be 9, right? But it's not, it's the opposite actually, because for every dB that my signal crosses my threshold, 2 dBs will go down. So you're not only losing, you're being penalized by how much you're going above the signal. Okay, all right. And it's kind of interesting because remember, my threshold is 0. So this becomes in my range. It's from, what's my range here? I might have to minus 60. So this compressor starts registering signals at minus 60. So if you put, it's easier to do it here, but if I bring it down all the way to, what is that? No, minus 51, right? What I did here, so you guys can tell, I put this to what, minus 51. Before it was to 0. You can see it, it's a lot easier to, because this one is not working anymore. Check it out. Yeah, you see how, now notice this, I'm gonna go to 0. See that? Excuse me, right there. There you go. Oh, to 0. It means that my signal would have to go all from here all the way to what? No, to what? 0 is almost clipping. See, minus 1, and then after minus 1 is 0. And that would be clipping. So imagine how loud my signal would have to be in order for the compressor to say, hey, I got a signal, now what do you want me to do, right? It would be extremely loud. So who can get there? Uh-huh. What signal can get there faster than anybody? The kick. Bingo. Right? What part of the signal would be? The loudest part, the initial. That, boom, it will eat up all my headroom right away. It will go into clipping. That's why it is very necessary to have a compressor on the kick. Okay. So, after the ratio, so we tell them a 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 7. So for every dB that passes through, an amount will be taken down, right? You will be penalized by it by reducing your volume, right? It's as if I go like, so every time somebody goes too loud, I go like this. And there.
Can you set the dynamics for just like only the kick?
Yes. So every channel has a compressor. And I can engage
And then you change that once.
the dial to say, hey, at what point do you want me to start working, right? That's,
For the whole band.
well, actually you can't. I'll tell you why that would be beneficial, okay? All of this is based on what? The EQ is to make sure they sound as natural as possible, right? And remember I told you it makes you sound natural and balanced, right? What is balanced with, right? Not only with the EQ and tonality, but also in volume. Because I don't want to hear Nate like too high, separated from nobody.
Did you have me muted this week?
Okay.
So everybody heard my dumb comment.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that everything sounds within range of each other, so that the whole music, the whole band sounds as one piece, right? That I can understand every piece of it, but I can see it and appreciate the individuality of what they're playing, what they're singing. But as a whole, I want people to enjoy the whole thing as one whole piece, right? Not separated instruments all playing at different volumes. And remember, in sound, loudest takes priority, or loudest is what people are attracted to, right? So it is important. I cannot be here doing this during the worship. Exactly. So compressor helps me do that automatically. A compressor can react so much faster than I can. So when the guitarist is like and cranks his his pedal, volume pedal up, I don't have to like, oh man, I jump right away into it. I put a compressor in there and it tames him. Right? Or a vocalist. All of a sudden they have their microphone here, and all of a sudden they feel like bring it up all the way here and like, whoa, what happened, right? So, or
It's like insurance, kind
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Exactly, and also um, the, uh, the presenter, the pastor, or the speaker. Sometimes they go soft, right, for effect, right? Like they want to draw you in. All of a sudden, they start screaming, you know. And, I, oh man, I seen all kinds of scenarios. Once I had a preacher that it was like ridiculously loud. I mean, but loud, 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 right? And to the point that in the middle of it is like the guy, the person who brought me in is like, just lower him, right? We brought him down, and in the middle of his presentation, he was like, "Hey, can we have more volume?" Oh my God, right? So to that, to that, and then I have some people that really speak really softly, right? So we bring him up in volume, but I put a compressor because when they get excited, bam, I don't want people to be shocked, right? Because loud. So in video, for example, if you put a like if you had bigger screens and you do iMac, which is image displayed in there of the same thing that is happening here, the bigger the image is as if you were in front of a person here screaming at them, like right in front of it. And in audio, it's the same thing. The louder they are, they look bigger than anything else, and so it feels like you're screaming at them like face to face. So you want to keep that balance with the audience. You want them to feel like we're talking, out of a comfortable space, but without me raising my voice too much. So that's why volume control is important. So we use tools like compression to help us do that.
That's sarcasm?
No, I'm serious. Kurt's voice was perfect. I thought it was so distracting that it sounded so natural. I was like, this doesn't sound like he's mic'd up, but
Okay.
but it was clearly in the house.
Uh-huh.
But it was just, yeah, it was really not like he had a good.
You see, he complimented a specific part of it, right?
Well, when he tells you to bring your volume down, you won't be offended.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, I got you.
okay, so we got threshold, how we monitor the signal in ratio, what we're gonna do with that signal, how we're gonna penalize it, right? And then we have attack. Attack means how fast the door opens. Release means exactly, right? And then at the end we have the makeup gain to address the penalty that I took during the reduction. And then why do we need the compressor at all, right? If we're just gonna make it up, because the signal was affected during the whole process, and the sound coming out will be different than the sound that went in. That's why. Okay. It's as if it's so the way the signal went in was at a certain shape, and then it came out at a different shape, but with less volume. So let me bring that shape, that transformation up, so that people are not like this, like, the signal is not jumping up and down, right? I wouldn't be balanced, right? I would be like, what is going on with that, right? So instead, signal goes into the compressor, it gets shaped, right? It gets penalized by volume, but in the process, it gets transformed into another different kind of signal. And this signal is a little lower, but it has different characteristics. Because remember, when the signal, like an example of myself as a signal, when I went in, this is only part of me, but the whole body and everything is what has more me than just my arm, right? And so now, by taming this, rotating, now you get to see my, quote unquote, my true self, right? Same thing with the kick. The kick is not just that initial hit. It's got more into it, right? Except we're not able to get to it because the initial part is too loud. It eats up all my headroom. So in order, I will tame it. And now this transform wave, I can bring it up in volume because it is controlled. It doesn't have highest parts. I tamed them. I brought them down. I cut them. And now I can bring this whole signal higher, and I can appreciate more of the signal of the kick. That's why we cut some of it, what we don't need. We accentuate parts of what we want to hear more of, and then we tame the whole signal so that it's compressed, right? So that we can fit it into a nice little box or whatever, and then we bring up the whole volume up of the whole signal up, and now we can appreciate a more funkier sound of the signal, or a more loosely sound of it, right? Remember last week when we did like, if we don't have the low end of it, we were not using compression, but just taking out the low end, it sounded like more open. We close it, we shaped off the low end, and it sounds more funky, more there's a phrase for it, more punchy, right? Now you want more attack. Attack is that hit between the beater and the head. That's called attack. Okay, but that's just a name they give that to that action. Again, let me rephrase this. Let me repeat this. Compressor has a threshold. That's how we monitor the signal. Has a ratio. This is how we affect the signal in volume only. We have an attack. That's how fast we're going to affect the signal. A release, how fast we're going to let go of the signal once that signal has receded from the threshold. Threshold is here. Signal comes up. It gets penalized, brought down. Once it has surpassed below the threshold, I release it. After I release it, now it's in a nice little package, right? Without this extra volume that it had at the beginning. And now I can make up the gain that I lost. And I bring it up so that way, signal went up this way, it gets compressed, it gets packaged up, is brought up to the same level, and it goes out. But the out part of it is already transformed. It's a different sound. Now, compressor is not only used to control the signal, but also to shape it. That's why I was telling you, it's another signal. It's another variation of the same signal, because you can use it as an artistic tool, right? Because I can take, a kick or a bass and a kick and play around with how they are perceived by the listener. Is the bass feels like it's carrying the whole bottom, or is it just feels like it's on top of it? If you listen to funky music, funk it's like you can hear a lot more fingering than you can hear the bottom of the bass. You can hear the bass, but it's a lot more detail in the fingering, the slapping, and all that, as opposed to jazz, for example. Jazz has you can hear a little bit of fingering there, but just the movement of the strings. But most of it is at the low end. All the movements, right? You can hear its clarity at the bottom. And if you listen to jazz, if they have a kick drum in there, the kick drum is not the what gets featured. You can hear it, but it's not like defined. It's just there in the background, right? But you don't hear like boom, boom. That's not in there. But if you hear a much like, for example, rock and roll, right? What we in church, it's a lot of rock, right? Rock and roll. So listen to the drums. The snare is very dominant, right? And sometimes it can be like little, they call it fat, like really it has the mids and lows accentuated, so that you can hear the snare. The snare will be the presence of it, right, on this 5,000 frequency. The low end on a snare would be on the 2 to 300. So here's a tip for you guys. For these kinds of mics, if you want people to feel more intimate with the speaker, bring up the 2 to 300 in it, and it feels like more mid loads, right? If you're looking here at this right here, you notice that my mids start at 200. So you take a 200, for example, here on my vocals here. You see here, I could take a 200 and just bump it up like 0.5 or 1 dB, and you'll see how the perception of the vocal changes. It has a little bit more power, not overly so, but it feels more intimate. As opposed to if I take it out, if I take out something like this, hey, so I'm here. I'm going to do a 200, for example. I took out something there. My mids, I'm going to take the mid here. And notice what the 400 feels like, right? It sounds like a box, right? So this is a good exercise for you to start noticing how a vocal sounds like, and you can tell, oh, that sounds a little in this area, right? Like that, or I can go here. See how that sounds? The S. It's just too much. Exactly. So, because I'm putting a lot of gain on it, so I go up here. This is nasally, right? So that's on the 2000. Okay, 2000 and all the way up. That gives you clarity on the voice. Okay, because what happens if I take it down? Now it's hard to understand. There are no S's. There's no clarity on it. Notice that's the 2000. That's a very important frequency, by the way. If you go here, you see everything starts. You can hear, but it's hard to understand. Now notice what happens if I go in the middle, which is very basic on the 600, 400, 200. Then your voice starts sounding thin, no power. So, oh, what happened? Oh, I went out here. Okay, so right there. You see that? How does that sound? So if you listen to a voice, it's like, ask yourself a question. First, does it sound natural? Does it sound like the person? Does it sound like a voice? If it doesn't, then start making some changes. Does it need clarity? Right? If so, don't give like 5, 6, 7 different gains or dBs. Try to see what the signal has too much of first. Does it sound too low? Does it have too much lows, too much mids? And then reduce those a little bit. So don't go, oh, I can't understand it, so let me give it like 5, 6 different dBs, right? Without actually addressing the problem. The problem may be in the mids or at the bottom instead of at the top. Okay?
You're just covering up instead of removing.
Bingo. That's called subtractive EQing. And there's a lot of schools of that. But I give you tools and you decide what you want to use. But the end result is this. Does it sound good? Does it sound natural? I don't care how you get there. I don't care what it looks like. Using your ears, does it sound natural? Does it sound good? Because if it does, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter how you get there. It just matters that you got there somehow. Okay? Yes.
If you were to add more gain, because you're trying to make that up, does that only apply when when the compressor is being invoked?
Yes. Good point. Good point.
So otherwise, the gain it's set and it goes back to what that is. It's only when something goes through that it's limited.
Only when the compressor has applied compression to the signal. If it doesn't, then the signal remains the same. The makeup gain does nothing, because makeup gain is only going to react when the signal has been transformed, let's call it that way, right? Because it lost something. But if my threshold is here and my signal never gets there, my signal here is not going to do anything. Actually, I lie. That is a lie. That is a lie. Let me tell you why. Because sometimes, remember I told you that my signal is affected by this right here, right? everything that goes through here. Sometimes I'm not able to do anything here, and I use the gain of the compressor to boost my signal out. So that's a lie, right, on my end.
So from an artistic perspective, you can actually create something a little bit unique within that way.
Correct. Yeah. So let me give you an example right here. So I'm gonna go to compression here. You can see it there, and the gain is 5, right? I'm gonna bring it down. Notice here it changed. I didn't change here. I apply additional gain because it has a gain, but it's the same signal going through. It's as if I was getting it here, but instead I'm doing it here. Watch. So I go here. I add it. So what would be an example, a good example for that? My streaming. Hey, sounds great, but my stream, I'm not getting enough signal of it. And I can't go mess with it because it's in the middle of the service. So I grab my compressor, I add a little bit of more gain, and that gives me more gain through the channel. Okay? Okay, so that will be, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, but yes, it can be used as that, as just a gain step. Now, can you put that to 0? We're gonna practice the compression here, okay? Can you put that to 0? Oh, you did, right? Okay, so notice you did or not?
No, it was already on 0.
Okay. All right, so notice that line that goes across, right? In one side, it's you got the volume, and then the other side you have the ratio. So I am going to do right now I'm talking, I am oscillating at around -18, -30, right? My signal, meaning my signal is just living, at around -18, right? So my compressor is not even working because I haven't reached anything. So can you put it to -30, please? Right around there. Oh, notice there you go. So that red line that is coming down, that's already gain reduction. What's my ratio? 2/5 to 1. Yep. So I am losing, for every dB that it's going above, I'm losing 2.5. Okay. I'm sorry. For every dB that my signal goes above the threshold, for every 2.5 dBs that my signal goes above the ratio, I'm losing 1. The number that goes before is the ratio, and then how am I losing 1? Because everything is 2 to 1, 3 to 1. 1 remains all the time. So if I do
The higher the ratio, the smaller the reduction?
yes, well, the reduction is going to be always the same, 1.
But I mean, a 2 to 1 is going to be more aggressive than an 8 to 1.
I was going to go there, an example. Correct. Because a 2 to 1 would be half. But 8 to 1 will be a fraction of it, right? So now 5 to 1 would be what? 20%, right? So this is where you use the compressor to help you shape how the signal changes. Notice how I don't have any gain, makeup gain, right? Notice how my signal has already changed. So notice what happens if I go, can you put it even lower? My threshold? Lower, there you go, keep going. There you go. Notice there, it's all based on the threshold and the ratio determine the severity of the penalty, right? Because if I do 8 to 1, but my threshold is super low, I'm gonna go through 8 like really, really fast. So the amount of compression is gonna be drastic, right? So this red LED going down is called GR, or gain reduction. This is how much I'm being penalized by. There you go. See how? So now you don't want the signal to sound so crushed or so compressed. Go ahead and be really drastic about it. I'm gonna put this to 3. And so now, hey, hey. So that's a lot faster, right? So I'm going to go and you have peak and RMS. RMS is called root means square. Peak means the loudest parts, the loudest parts of a signal. Remember the example of the kick? The loudest part is the beginning. Okay, that's a momentary, it's a milliseconds of a very, very high signal. That's what the peak is. If I change it to peak, go ahead and peak. It'll react a lot. Okay, yeah, it'll react a lot faster. Notice how my sound changes. Now do RMS, and I'll keep talking at the same height. Now you hear a difference between them two. Very subtle, but there is a difference. Now let's try to, we hold the signal. How long am I going to hold that signal once it passes my threshold? In milliseconds. So I can hold it for 10 milliseconds, for 50 milliseconds right here. Exactly. So you can, milliseconds.
How was the highest number you
Can you put the hold all the way to the highest? It's a lot easier. There you go. 2,000 milliseconds. So notice what happens to the GR, to the gain reduction signal. Yeah. So notice that. It takes longer for the signal to be released. That's what the hold is. Hey, I'm going to penalize you. I'm going to keep you here for a little while. 2 seconds.
Why would you want to hold it a sound longer versus shorter?
Because it depends on what sound you're going after and what instrument you're applying it to.
You want something to be held that you want to have people hear more of?
The contrary, because if the sound you're after, you don't want to lose the shape of the sound that you're going after, we want to keep it there for a little longer than just milliseconds of it, as opposed to 2 seconds. Can you bring it down to all the way to 0 almost? So notice what happens when I'm talking. I am talking right now in this 0.07 milliseconds. The signal goes back to normal faster than it does when I do a 2 seconds hold on it. More so depends on your release. Okay. You have 230. Go ahead and do the release all the way to the right, like 4 seconds, right? So the release is the hold is hey, hold the signal here, and don't release it until I tell you so. It's gonna take a while. So I keep talking, and I'm always in the negative. I'm always being squashed. Okay, compressed. So, but more so than the compression is the sound has been changed and is being kept changed for however long you decided to it. As opposed to, go ahead and do a 10 seconds hold. Yep, and release 600 milliseconds. What about there in attack? There you go. So my signal goes back to its normal sound faster. And so in vocals, I wouldn't want to hold somebody for 4 seconds. I want a fast release because I don't want people to notice that it's been going. The idea of compression.
Is it because the first is usually the loudest?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what you want to pass for a short amount of time.
Exactly. And because they are putting signal like really, like I'm talking, I can constantly have a signal on it, right? So I wouldn't want to be so compressed that all you hear is, hey, hello, like really like boxed in. That's like, I can tell there is compression there. Now release the compressor, just turn it off and you'll hear the difference. I will keep talking here until, there you go, that's the difference. Now it sounds like, whoa, it opened up. So you don't want that contrast. I don't want to live in the compression because it doesn't sound natural. So if I was to compress my voice, I would do it at the loudest parts.
Like making it comfortable for people to listen.
Exactly. So if I go, hey, right? But take off the compression. No, just turn it off. Hey. You see the difference? Now put the compressor. Hey.
No, put the compressor. Let's engage the compressor. There you go. There you go. Hey. See that? That's a big difference, right? And so, I was exaggerating like with the loudest part, but that is exactly what happens when you have instruments, when you have vocalists. Like, hey, all of a sudden it's like, whoa. So you want to control those as much as you can without making them sound too transform, or that you're affecting them so much that it doesn't really sound good, right? So you can overly compress people, and you can overly compress signals. Why is that important? Because go ahead and take it off. So now notice here, you start with that, right? Okay, that sounds open. That sounds maybe a little shape here and there, and then just when I get a little too excited, then let me just bring you down. I always start with the vocalist. I start at the top. When I say the top, I mean only in terms of volume. Okay, I start like on their loudest parts. I compress them just a tiny bit. Maybe 3, no more than 4 dBs of compression, 4 to 1 or 2 to 1, 3 to 1. That's pretty regular hold of 10 milliseconds in a 630 or 700 and whatever release. And then a makeup gain of 2 to 3 dBs. Why? So when they are singing, they're always in front. Like for the main singers, compression. Because I always want them to be like right there. I want that when they whisper, people can hear. Yeah, but mainly I want them to be so clear that when they say, because singers, for example, they're like this, right? Worship leaders. When they sing, that like they're wow excited, but then when they talk, hello, and it's hard to hear them. So I use compression to help me alleviate that, because when they're talking, I want their whispers to be heard over everything. And then when they sing loud, I have the compression to help me tame them. Nobody responds or does anything. So there's 2 parts to that. I would say you have to be conscious of how close you are to the mic. That's one thing. Okay, so if that is the case, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be heard. So we got to look at the how the mix has been done and how your EQ and your compression. So now you can use compression as a tool to help alleviate that. Because if you're here like this, you're giving me enough signal. Unless you go like super quiet, right? So, but that is important, because if you say something, so that's why mixing from the top down may be a good way to experiment. Meaning, I start with my vocals, and then I get the lead vocal. That sounds good, great. Now let me add the background vocals. Now let me add the piano. Now let me add the guitar. Now let me add the bass, and now let me add the drums at the end. I started with the vocals, and then everything is trickled down, as opposed to a mix from the bottom up. Starts with the drums, the bass, the guitars, and everything. And so everything that goes after that, what happens? It's already louder and louder and louder. By the time the vocalist comes in, he has to be extra loud to overcome this. Now, here's a challenge for you. If you can mix at a lower volume, your mix is going to sound great at louder volumes. But if you mix only at the loudest volumes, if I bring your mix down by a few dBs, it's going to be trash.
How do you make sure you're mixing at a low volume?
Okay, so like when I did I started helping our own church in the broadcast, and I have monitors here and there. I always mixed at a level where I can talk to you while I'm mixing, as opposed to bringing down the speakers like so loud that I can, oh wow, that sounds great there. It's easier, not easy, but easier perhaps to mix with loudest. But if you're able to just practically here, I would start, for example, here.
I bring everything down to -10. Okay? That would be a practical way of starting a mix at a lower volume. I start at -10, for example, and then I do this with the vocals. My vocals are going to... No, this is for house. This is the house right here on DCAs groups. And I start with my vocals. So on there, got it here. I'm going to boost my vocals by 3 dBs or 5 dBs. It might start at 0. And then everything else, -10. I already have 10 dBs of difference or 5 dBs of difference between the main vocals and my instruments. Now, this is where your skills become sharpened and become a lot more important than just moving knobs or moving faders up and down. Because now, how do I make this sound balanced without raising the volume up? Now you get your drums. Okay, so now I have to start carving out space for one another. You may end up just raising it about that much. That's okay, right? But if you can't mix here, if you force yourself to mix here at a lower volume, I bet you that if you bring this up higher, it's gonna sound just good. Remember the two important points that I told you at the beginning of the class. It's about, does it sound natural? That's the question. Does it sound natural? And does it sound balanced? This is about balance. So if I start with this here, right? And then I start, okay, does it sound balanced here, there? It's not about like do you want to hear that? Great. Okay, so that would be a preference, as opposed to the need to have the kick sound like really out there, right? But can I hear it clearly without having it blown away or having people feel the punch in their chest, right? Maybe for a youth night that would be an entirely different mix, right? But for a congregation, depends on the demographics of the congregation, right? If they're younger, they like it louder, right? That's fine. That's okay. So, but a balanced mix can sound good at a lower volume, but everything like within each other. So you use volume as a control measure, and also your tools of dynamics, controlling the signals. That it gets too loud, we compress it. You want to hear what the compression is before we do? Do you want to go hit the kick, or do you want to be here? Or maybe your son can hit kick. Okay. Sorry. I just want to hear it. Let me see. I wanted to. Oh man, what the heck is going on here? Okay. I don't know why. Okay. Nice. Keep going. So notice here. I'm gonna take away. So that's what it sounds like with just the key. I'm on the on the EQ right now. Okay, there you go. So keep going. So I'm going to take the EQ and everything away. That's what it sounds like with nothing. That's like you getting a piece of ice just like that, right? And then you start chipping away stuff that you don't want. Right, big difference, right? So now notice how loud look at the kick. He's hitting me like really hard. He's not hard, but look at that. If I wanted to hear the meat of that, I'm starting at -10. Watch this. See, he's clipping. That's the head, he's eating my headroom really fast, but that's why I want to hear the meat of it, right? So I can't bring him up in volume because he would eat up my headroom and I would be clipping right away. So I'm going to engage the help of my compressor. So I go here. I'm going to ask you to do that 0. Okay, listen, okay? Now start bringing my threshold down. I'll tell you when. Keep going. There you go. A little too much. Bring it up. Just the very top. Okay, there you go. Now listen to the ratio. Now you listen to how it changes. I'm gonna change it here, but I want you to listen the effect. You hear the smack or the attack goes away when I go higher. All I'm doing is changing the ratio. 1 to 1. There's no change. Okay? Now the attack. Can you change the attack? Now bring it down. What do you hear? No. Listen to the initial attack. Go ahead.
Notice it's a little bit more, my ears, like a little more intense.
Let me do it. I want you guys to hear it. Okay? Go ahead. Listen to it. Don't look at the screen. Okay? What does that sound like to you? Okay. But not only listen, the attack has to do with how fast it will react. What is the compressor reacting to? The loudest parts, right? And the loudest part is when the beater hits the head, right? That sounds as plastic. Listen to it. Just direct your attention to the plasticky sound and how it goes away. It's different. It's there, but it's not the same as this. Deeper sound. So in audio they call that round. It's a little more roundish. It still has the beater in there, but this sounds more plasticky, less defined, less mids and lows, because it's attacking the loudest part of it. Now, so I put a medium attack. Now watch what happens with the release. Now what happens if I hold it? Yeah, but exactly. So it feels like he's like letting go of, right? And now look at now let's listen to the makeup gain. But notice where my signal is. Now I can listen to this. Listen to that. That's the release. Listen to that. Now this is that was the attack. I'm sorry. Listen to the attack all the way up. Now all the way, like really fast. Do you guys hear that or not? There it's all the way down. Now watch what happens when I bring it all the way, meaning a slower attack, a slower reaction time.
Those sounds are getting through.
More sound is getting through. Now this one attacks faster.
So it
It cuts
cuts it out.
it out. Okay, so now release. I put a makeup game of 7 dBs. Now I want you to notice something. That's no compression. Look. See that?
Makes it sound like almost a different instrument.
Bingo. So give me a snare, please. Now I want you to see the snare. To us, it may seem like, oh, it sounds okay, right? Or whatever, right? But notice this. So I'm going to... So reset the compressor on the snare. Okay, you gotta do me a favor. Hold on. We're gonna do this while you guys are doing that. I can probably do this. I want to try something here. Did I have my right here? Okay, do me a favor, and you're going to hit the snare one more time. Okay, the kick. Okay. And then the snare. Hold on. I want to do this right here. I'm going to take away this. Okay. Bingo. Okay. So go ahead. You're going to hit it until I tell you to stop. Okay. Just go ahead like that. Okay. Hold on. Go. Gonna record a snare, and then you guys gonna practice if I can get this whole band together with you guys here. Okay, now do the snare when I tell you, please. Okay, now do kick and snare, please. 1, 2, go. Okay. Thank you. You are released from your duties. Okay, so. Oh man, don't tell me. Okay, all right. Okay, let's come over here and let's see. Now you're gonna start doing it here. No, it's not. You're not gonna have the benefit of the EQ here. So let's start with this one right here. Okay, somebody wants to try to do that? Come on. Not, okay. I'm gonna do this here. There you go, just one channel here. Okay, somebody